Fundraisers know many of our donors are in the boomer generation, maybe even in the silent generation, which are people older than 80 years old now. And this is wonderful, very generous. Of course, we're inclusive of all generations as we fundraise, but we know the highest household giving is from that boomer generation. Here's what we also know, that just part of the normal aging process is brains start working differently, right? There can be some forgetfulness that happens and some other challenges. And then even worse, there can be some medical conditions like dementia, like Alzheimer's, like Parkinson's. And I doubt that there's anybody viewing or listening to this podcast who doesn't know somebody personally in their own family or in a friend group where this has happened. It's just so widespread. So with fundraising, what do we do when we start to notice this? And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. This is the first day on the fundraising school, and I'm welcoming Morgan Jessup. Morgan is the director of the Walk to End Alzheimer's as part of the Indianapolis chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. And Morgan, thanks for being with us on the Fundraising Schools podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Bill.
Yeah, so just for context, tell people what is the Walk to End Alzheimer's as part of the National Alzheimer's Association as you're headquartered in the capital city of Indiana.
Yes. So the Alzheimer's Association, we are the leading voluntary health organization, really driving to the care, support, and resources, and of course, the research advancements for early detection, diagnosis, and one day a cure for Alzheimer's and all other forms of dementia. And one of the primary ways that we are able to raise funds to provide those resources and to drive that research at a global level is through our Walk to End Alzheimer's campaign. And the walk is not just happening here in Indianapolis or the state of Indiana, it's happening across our nation. There are around 620 some walks that take place in the fall every year across the nation. And again, really driving that awareness and the fundraising aspect of the work that we do in the community. And I really want to dig into like the awareness piece because a lot of individuals don't know that the Alzheimer's Association exists and that there's a chapter in their local community or their state that they have access to. They don't know that these resources like our 24/7 helpline and caregiver support groups exist. And oftentimes the first time that folks are introduced to that is through the walk. They're invited by a family member or a colleague or a neighbor to join them at the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So we really see the walk as a front door into our mission for many folks to learn more about the resources, about the advancements in research, and to have a platform and have a voice in this if they have a loved one who has a diagnosis, whether it's Alzheimer's or any other form of dementia, if they've cared for somebody in the past and they want to walk in memory of them. This just gives them a platform and a voice in a fight that can sometimes feel so dark as we're looking to see those advancements in research and one day a cure.
And part of this journey is just awareness and to know this is sadly a widespread situation in our society, to just speak up, get the help you need, including from the Alzheimer's Association. And those resources include how to notice the early onset, how to respond, how to work with that loved one. And all of that is important. But then some of those resources, Morgan, you were telling me, translate for the fundraiser. And so, as we know, many of our donors are in that boomer generation, in that silent generation, where these types of conditions tend to manifest more than in the earlier generations. Not saying that they don't, but looking at the preponderance. So first of all, like, what should fundraisers be watching for? Let's have a fundraiser, have this donor, it's a couple, individual, whatever the case might be. What am I looking for that might be concerning compared to what am I seeing that might just be natural forms of aging that happen to everybody is if they're fortunate to grow older?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that there is a difference between just natural aging and forgetting where you left your keys once or, misplacing something. There's a difference in that. It's the difference between those kind of things that happen versus things that are disrupting an individual's daily life or changes in personality and mood, or really just the confusion of time and place. When you start to identify some of those things, it's important to know where to turn and to have a list. And that's something that the association provides, is really knowing the 10 signs. And we have education programs and bookmarks and flyers that we really try to distribute throughout the community through through the walk, through our educational partners, and through education programs that we present for different groups and organizations. So being able to get that information into the hands even before people know that they might need it, just to have that awareness in advance, because it is so important to be able to navigate that situation if they notice something in a loved one, or if they, as a fundraiser, if you notice that in somebody that you are working with, a donor, a constituent, whatever that case might be. It's so important to be able to navigate that conversation and to understand what might be happening with them. And that's something as a team at the Alzheimer's Association, we really try to be person-centered, and we endeavor to build relationships with our constituents and our donors, to know them and to realize, like, if something seems off, if that's a conversation that we can have with that individual directly, or perhaps it's their support system and network that we kind of reach out to have that conversation as well.
So again, we recommend to everybody, find the list of the 10 signs that dementia might be coming on. It's a free resource. Have it for our personal lives. Take advantage of that. What about in fundraising? Can you give us some 4 instances of what that might look like based on those 10 warning signs that your organization publishes? Again, I have this relationship with my donor, and you said something seems off. Like, what is off? Can you expand on that a little bit? That as I'm having coffee with this person, visiting with them in their home, whatever the case might be, I'm like, is this just the natural form of aging, or is there something concerning here? Can you give us some practical examples?
Yes, so I actually, in my tenure with the Alzheimer's Association, and even in my tenure in the nonprofit sector, which is nearing 9 years now, I have not had a direct experience with this, but I've heard from some of my other colleagues and team members who have kind of noticed signs, or maybe some signals that something's up, or it may not even be necessarily around dementia or Alzheimer's or kind of like memory loss, but a health situation, et cetera. But specifically around dementia, I think it would look more like, again, the confusion with time and place, or perhaps repeating themselves or changing a lot of what they are sharing from, like, you're not obviously having just one meeting or one conversation with a donor or constituent if you're building a long-standing relationship with them. So just, I think, being aware and seeing some of those noticeable changes are, I think, the biggest piece. And perhaps, like, if they miss one meeting or conversation with you, that's not cause for concern. But if it's consistently happening, and they are no longer able to kind of keep track of their calendar or keep track of their commitments or what they are partnering with you on, that is some of the kind of signs that you'd want to kind of raise a flag with and have a more in-depth conversation with the donor. Or if you feel well enough connected, again, with their support network, is it having a conversation with those individuals to see if they might be seeing similar signs, and just approaching it with compassion and care, I think, is the biggest thing, right? We're not trying to raise alerts for no reason. It's because we care about the people that we are working with, and we care how we are showing up for them in regards to. So being able to have those conversations is important. And again, the association provides a lot of education and training around being able to communicate around this, and being able to kind of guide that conversation. And all of the resources are completely free. So we, again, try to really show up for our community and organizations and businesses who may be working directly with clients, especially within the financial realm. So great many of our partners within the Walk to End Alzheimer's and with organization-wide are sometimes financial advisors or individuals who are working alongside their clients within the finance management realm, and being able to provide their teams the resources and education materials so that way they can be a resource to their clients as well. And they can also identify those signs of there might be something amiss. This person has told me this their entire life, and now they're like switching up names or switching up places, and it's just not tracking like it has previously. And then they can refer to the association's resources to be able to kind of guide that conversation and identify if it is more of just natural aging and it was a one-off instance, or if this is something to have concern about.
Yeah, I appreciate the tangible examples, and also want to harken back to one of your earlier comments that it's also a change in mood. that you notice too. And if you've developed this professional, appropriate relationship with the donor and you're noticing just that difference of emotion, difference in mood, that could be a warning sign as well. And I also just want to associate with what you said about financial planners. Yes, wealth advisors love that they are using your resources, because with fundraising also, there could be this, financial exchange that's going to happen, which gets to the heart of why we wanted to talk with you. So if I do notice these warning signs, as a fundraiser, and I know you said you haven't encountered this, but put yourself in that seat. What would you do? What would you do in terms of that person, their family, their relationships, and within your nonprofit? And as we, listen to you here, Morgan, we can apply this to our context as well. So, what advice do you have for fundraisers if they start seeing these warning signs?
My biggest thing, again, is to come back to the compassion and grace, and to be willing to have what could be a difficult conversation, especially if a constituent or donor is wanting to make a donation, but you feel like this might be not necessarily coming from a place where they should be making that large of a donation, or it's not tracking with how they've normally engaged or donated in the past. Again, being very person-centric and knowing your donors and being aware of their support system. And again, case by case basis, right? But if it's appropriate to have that conversation directly with the individual, just wanting to check in, is this how you're wanting to move forward? And I'm seeing some causes for concern as far as what you have or how you have normally engaged in the past. And I want to have that kind of honest, transparent conversation with you. And perhaps if you know your donor well, and maybe it is getting to the point where this is a conversation that needs to be taken to their support system to raise that awareness and concern with them as well, because maybe it is helping to direct them to perhaps getting a additional kind of guidance from their primary care physician and potentially a diagnosis, etc. So just again, being very person-centric and just being willing to have that conversation. And I think, again, familiarizing yourself with the warning signs, familiarizing yourself with how to guide those conversations is incredibly important, even if you've not experienced it like myself, but just knowing that it is a possibility. And I mean, as an organization, obviously, all of our work really revolves around those who are walking a dementia journey or Alzheimer's or any other form of dementia. But this is something that applies to anyone in the nonprofit sector or fundraisers. It could happen to any of our organizations. So being equipped to navigate that and empowered to have those conversations is incredibly huge. And I would say too, even with knowing the 10 warning signs, a conversation could still be difficult to have. And I always with everything, I like to direct folks to our 24/7 helpline. And that is truly a free resource accessible nationwide. And it's not just for somebody who has a diagnosis or somebody who's currently caregiving. It's for the community at large. If you have questions around Alzheimer's or any other form of dementia, if you have questions around resources, if you have questions around navigating a conversation, they are there and staffed by master's level clinicians to be able to talk folks through whatever situation that they are currently trying to address. So I really can't recommend them enough as a resource and kind of preparing for the conversation. Because I mean, you might notice something in a donor or constituent and may not feel ready to have that conversation. So going back and really plugging into these resources and connecting with those who can help guide the conversation would be huge. And then being able to have that conversation directly with the donor or their support system.
I just wanted to amplify that last point. I'm so glad you mentioned that free hotline. Thank you. And because, we're not saying here that this is easy. If this were easy, we wouldn't be recording a podcast topic about it. We know this can be challenging. We know that the donor might react in an unfavorable way. I mean, especially if mood swings are part of the manifestation of what they're dealing with. But it's just so essential. And Morgan, it just reminds me of what we teach at the fundraising school across the board, and not just in this situation, that at the end of the day, the most important thing is not the gift. The most important thing is the relationship with the donor and treating the donor with human dignity, whether they're fully healthy or they're struggling with some situation in their life or they're having an onset of dementia, whatever the case might be, the relationship with the donor is what always is primary. And that's what you're reminding us here in this particular situation. I'm also thinking internally at the nonprofit organization, it seems to me, I think it would benefit maybe if we had a written policy in place, or if this was part of our gift acceptance policy, that if we notice a health situation, if we notice or suspect the possibility of dementia coming on, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and so forth, these are the steps we're going to take, that we would be making sure we're having open conversations internally. Hey, I just came back from this donor meeting. I need to tell you guys, here's what I'm seeing. I need your help. Let's go back to the policy. That there's a good organizational role here as well. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I would 100% recommend collaborating with your team members who are in the development world or just across the nonprofit sector, because they are also working with constituents externally. So being able to come back to the team and your leadership to discuss and what you're seeing and what the next steps could look like are definitely important. And the Alzheimer's Association, we have chapters across the nation. So we are a national organization. So we have our leadership and team here in Indiana, but we also can rely on our nationwide and home office colleagues and what experience they have and what resources or recommendations they might have. So really being willing to have that conversation and raise this up to be able to better address and support our constituents is incredibly important. We are not like in this alone or navigating the situation alone. It's important to bring the team along with it because likely they may not have experienced it before or they may have. So you can play into that experience and everyone can learn as we step forward and be able to navigate this more smoothly moving forward as well.
And the national organization is the Alzheimer's Association. Is that correct? The Alzheimer's Association?
Mm-hmm.
So folks, look up the Alzheimer's Association, whether you're searching through AI, whether you're doing an online type of a Google search, Firefox, whichever one you use, and you'll learn about these free resources on this very important topic. So notice, ask, bring in family members if possible and friends, share internally, have a policy in place. We never, ever want to be taking advantage of people, of course. And there's this particular context where that issue becomes even more central. Morgan Jessup is the director of the Walk to End Alzheimer's as part of the Alzheimer's Association. She's based in Indianapolis. Morgan, thank you for enlightening us on this very important topic. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you having me on, Bill. Thank you.
And at the Fundraising School, we talk about the importance of the relationship with the donor, whether it's annual fund, major gift, campaigns, planned giving, whatever the case might be, throughout our 28 courses leading to 5 different certificates in person in about a dozen U.S. cities now. We're trying to get as close to you as we possibly can when we're in person, but we're also online. Either the courses are recorded or live in a virtual setting, which you, of course, can take anywhere around the world. We have customized training that we can design just for you. We have our quarterly webinars, and we have this free weekly podcast. All of our information gathered in our textbook, Achieving Excellence in Fundraising. And you find us online at go.iu.edu/TFRS for the Fundraising School. So grateful for our producers today, Mike Anthony and Jennifer Boffman. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz, and now you are now more fully informed on this first day from the Fundraising School.